days like this, it is almost time. Tonight, dreams will come true for 60 young men and their families on the big stage in Brooklyn.
Yeah, finally, tonight's the night. The 73rd NBA draft is upon us. You know, it feels like we know how those first couple of picks are going to go, but you just never know. Anything can happen once the teams are officially on the clock. And look, our clock says we are just under 1 hour away from tonight's draft. Here are the storylines as we get you set. The top storylines, of course, Zion Williamson, the young man we all assume will be taken #1 overall by the New Orleans Pelicans, who've had their eyes set on the Duke freshman to become the new face of their franchise. Once the Zion domino presumably falls, Ja Morant and R.J. Barrett are expected to go at picks 2 and 3 respectively. Morant to Memphis to join the Grizzlies, Barrett to the Big Apple with the Knicks. So the real intrigue of the draft is expected to begin at pick #4. The Lakers will be making the pick on behalf of the Pelicans as part of the Anthony Davis trade. But who goes at #4? And will that pick be moved? Can't wait for that storyline. One of the biggest risers up the draft board right now is North Carolina point guard Kobe White. He had a private workout with the Knicks just this morning. And in the latest ESPN mock draft, White is projected to go 6th overall to the Suns. But regardless of who goes where, tonight's the night the lives of many young men will change forever.
No one did a team would like to take me #1. I mean, you can't dream this any better than that.
This is what every basketball player dream of, is having the chance to play at the NBA level, and right now I have that chance.
I'm built for this because I feel like I'm really ready for the challenge.
If you know me, I try to make everything fun, so it's been quite fun for me.
You know, you see how I am, you see what I've done so far in my career. I just feel like I accept the challenge, and I'm really going to give it everything I got.
It's been weird, like turning on ESPN or something. My name's just right there. Obviously something I'm not used to.
I just get to be myself. I'm not trying to be nobody. I'm just trying to be the first Zion.
ESPN NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski joins us now live from Barclays Center in Brooklyn with some breaking news. Woj, we just described what that 4th pick is all about. The Lakers selecting on behalf of the Pelicans, part of that Anthony Davis trade. What is breaking? What's going on?
Well, Sage, now the Pelicans, the Lakers will be selecting on behalf of the Atlanta Hawks. They have traded into that #4 spot. They're going to give New Orleans #8, #17, #35 in tonight's draft. A protected first-round pick next year that they have from Cleveland. And New Orleans sends that 4th pick, Solomon Hill, and his expiring contract, the #57 pick tonight, and a future 2nd-round pick to the Atlanta Hawks for the 4th pick. And with the 4th pick, Atlanta's GM, Travis Schlenk, is targeting Virginia's DeAndre Hunter. This has been the player he has been pursuing throughout this preseason. Last year, he went up he made the deal with Dallas to select Trae Young. This year, he moves up to get Hunter. That's a pretty significant core they put together with the Hawks. And New Orleans continues to expand this Anthony Davis deal, get even more value, more picks from that trade last Saturday.
Yeah, and again, we were saying just a minute ago, who knows what's going to happen with that #4 pick. Now we know 8, 17, and 35. So, Woj, let's start with the Pelicans. Give us the mindset of David Griffin now, the new GM there, who's making all kinds of moves.
Well, you know, they wanted to see what the marketplace would hold for #4. Minnesota was really aggressive, trying to get up into that spot. But Atlanta, having 3 of the top 17 picks, you know, gave them the opportunity to do this and the cap space to take on Hill's contract. And, you know, now, you know, listen, David Griffin can draft at 8 and 17 tonight. He could go back and look for another trade here and move those picks. So he's got a lot of flexibility. But that original Laker deal that included 3 first-round picks, you know, now it's become 4 or 5 picks. That Cleveland pick next year, that goes to the Pelicans, probably turns into 2 second-round picks. It's heavily protected. But I think both GMs really got what they were pursuing here. Both had a lot of flexibility, multiple picks to play with.
And you look at the Atlanta Hawks, too, Woj, and a year ago getting Trae Young, and, of course, he's up for Rookie of the Year. He had one heck of a rookie season with the Atlanta Hawks. But overall, on a national level, we don't hear too much about Atlanta. Describe what's going on with this franchise as they try to climb up the ranks of the Eastern Conference.
They've just done a tremendous job there of maximizing these picks. Not just Trae Young last year, but Kevin Huerter, who they also got in the first round. And in this, and then John Collins, who's was the first pick Travis Schlenk made in Atlanta. Lloyd Pierce, you saw the improvement in that team last year as they went on. And they're a young team that is already very competitive. Another year of watching these young players grow. And then all of a sudden, maybe Atlanta is a team that with their cap space and how clean their financial books are, they could be out in free agency. This is exactly how ownership in Atlanta imagine this going with the multiple picks they had going forward. Travis Schlenk has maximized, a lot of those at-bats in the draft, and he'll move up tonight, and his plan is to take DeAndre Hunter from Virginia, maybe the best defensive player in this entire draft.
Yeah, so recapping Woj's breaking news once again, the Lakers will now be drafting for the Atlanta Hawks with that number 4 overall pick, while the Pelicans take home, of course, the number 1 pick, we assume is Zion, also 4, 17, and 35. And hey, we still have almost a full hour to go before the draft begins. Adrian Wojnarowski with the very latest. Stand by if we need you. We're going to come right back out to you, Woj. Thank you. Coming up with Kyrie and Al Horford likely on their way out of Boston. Jackie McMullen on the state of the Celtics and the plan for their first 3 picks tonight.
Pelicans' future, but a player that is set to change the NBA. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on ESPN News, presented by Progressive Insurance. You can always join the conversation, 888-729-3776 on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Coming up on today's show, I'm going to talk to 2016 NFL MVP Matt Ryan. And we're going to figure out if Zion Williamson can change more than the Pelicans. But it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. My evolution on Zion Williamson has been complete. I started out the college basketball season last year. I remember talking to Sean Farnham, ESPN's college basketball analyst, and I remember agreeing with Farnham at the time that R.J. Barrett, Zion Williamson's fellow Dookie, was a better pro prospect than Zion Williamson. And the argument went like this. It was that R.J. Barrett was projectable. I could see what he was going to be. I could see that he was a ball handler, a creator, that he was in that two-way wing type of profile and build. I could look at players in the NBA who were similar to R.J. Barrett and say that's who he could one day become. And when it came to Zion Williamson, it took more creativity. It took more imagination. It took you to think outside the box, color outside the lines. Is he a potential weight issue? Does he have enough of a shot? What position does he play? Those were all questions that weren't easy to answer. They weren't as easy as saying R.J. Barrett looks like an NBA player. But as the college basketball season wore on, and I watched Zion Williamson, and as you watch at the same time the way the NBA has evolved over the last half a decade, you start to see that Zion Williamson is projectable. He's projectable as a revolutionary player. We talk about generational type talents often. That's how we define special players. Is he a generational type player? LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Is he the kind of guy that comes along once a decade and dominates the league? I don't know if Zion Williamson's going to be a generational type player. I don't know that he's going to dominate the league, certainly in the way that LeBron James did. But I do think that Zion Williamson is a revolutionary player. I think he will be somebody, and the teams that he plays on will be teams that the league tries to keep up with, tries to find answers for. That is a puzzle that the rest of the league continuously tries to solve. I think his unique abilities will keep everyone else in response and react mode. I think Zion Williamson is the real deal. And so does Jay Billis, ESPN's college basketball analyst, who was on Golic and Wingo.
Our ratings for college basketball were way up. Ratings for Duke games were way up. The Duke games were high anyway. But it wasn't because we ran some really clever promos, all due respect to those who put the promos together. But once you saw Zion Williamson, you knew. He's one of those few players that you see and right away you know. You don't need to have breakdowns of like, what are his shooting percentages and what does he do off pick and roll and all this other stuff. You know right away. He's the real thing. And as long as he stays healthy, he's got superstar written all over him.
The hype that Jay Billis talks about is undoubtedly true. It's hard-pressed to come up with other players who come into the draft with more hype. And when you have that much hype, you rightfully have skeptics. You rightfully have doubters. Cerruti, who's running the show, Nuno's riding shotgun, and Bubba's on the board. We got the family back together today. We were talking pre-show, and Cerruti found an article from back in 2017 about the most hyped prospects from any sport, NFL, NHL, NBA, baseball, the most hyped prospects of all time. And yeah, as you look through the list, which went pretty deep, it went 32 players deep, you'll find a lot where the hype exceeded the output. The hype exceeded the production. I mean, I give you Reggie Bush. In 2006, a draft full of hype, by the way. Matt Leinart, Vince Young, Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush's hype, his highlight reel, his reputation surely exceeded what we ended up getting in the NFL. And there were others. Jameis Winston's been incredibly hyped and hasn't quite lived up to it. Greg Oden was massively hyped. In fact, he was hyped so much that he was taken before Kevin Durant in the draft. And look, Greg Oden was a great center out of Ohio State, but injuries derailed where he went. I think the most hyped player I can think of in my lifetime, and I'm not saying hyped with no bang for the buck, not hyped meaning he didn't pan out, is Mike Vick. In fact, I think Mike Vick is a pretty dang good corollary for what I'm talking about with Zion Williamson. Mike Vick promised revolution. He promised change. Mike Vick made you think differently about the quarterback position, about the way it could be played, about what you could hope to expect. Michael Vick blew your mind, man. Obviously, not just with his arm, but with his legs. But if you look at the top 5 people listed on this article from 2017, you would have to say the hype was met with reality. I'll give it to you quickly. At number 5, I believe this came from, Cerruti, you can help me out here. Would this come from Bleacher Report? From USA Today. 5, Andrew Luck lived up to the hype. But when it came out, I think Mel Kiper Jr. said best quarterback prospect in 30 years. And that's including Peyton Manning, who had his own fair share of hype. At number 4, Tim Duncan, who everybody wanted to get a hold of coming out of Wake Forest. At number 3, Sidney Crosby on this list of most hyped. And you're seeing the trend here now? These guys, hyped, but real. At number 2, Bryce Harper. Maybe not quite the LeBron James of baseball that was promised, but certainly an excellent Major League Baseball player. Number 1, of course, is LeBron James. The point is, all 5 of them have been real. And I think Zion is going to be real. So does Mike Schmitz, ESPN's NBA draft analyst on SportsCenter.
I think Zion's in a class of his own. I really do. I think the thought that he's this gimmick and he's just a dunker and he's just there to sell tickets is ridiculous. I mean, he was the best player in college basketball. He does it on both ends of the floor. He plays as hard as any number 1 prospect I can remember. He can switch every ball screen. He can protect the rim. He can push it off the break. He's really coming into the NBA at the perfect time. And you saw how much he impacted winning for that Duke team. So I think the idea that he's just this guy who's going to sell tickets and, put butts in seats, I don't subscribe to that. I really don't.
You know what's hype? You know what's real hype? The idea that the NBA draft is going to save your franchise. The idea that having a top 5 pick in the NBA draft is what everyone should be gunning for in a trade. The idea of recent vintage that NBA draft picks have so much real value as compared to players already established in the NBA. What's real hype is the idea that there is gold and riches and promise and hope to be found in the NBA draft. It consistently disappoints on a way to reboot your franchise. But not with Zion Williamson. In fact, I'll tell you this. I'll give you the player that I think Zion Williamson, in fact, the combination of 2 players, that I think Zion Williamson promises to be. And I'll tell you a team that bucks this trend of having the draft be a bunch of fairy dust and hype, a team that consistently does it better than everybody else. That's Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less, only at Walmart. I'll tell you who that player is, those 2 players that Zion could promise to be, and the team that just outdoes everybody. That's coming up next in the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. It's time to get off the couch and start enjoying plans away from